I am compelled by hard conversations. And today with you, I want to explore one I find particularly harrowing. I want to talk about trust. I'm a facilitator of strategic teams. I'm a dialogue partner to leaders of all kinds. I'm a negotiator. I'm a hospice volunteer. So why is trust harrowing? I mean, it's more like a continuum, isn't it, between trust and mistrust. And we spend our lives walking along that continuum. On a good day, we meet someone who we think is special, who sees us. We trust them. On a bad day, we encounter someone we thought we knew who does something to us we didn't expect. Addition, subtraction. And it almost feels like it's a matter of circumstance or luck, how it all works. But what if trust isn't a continuum at all? What if it's a state, abiding, imperishable, like mercy or compassion or love? What if our trusting and being trustworthy actually didn't depend upon anyone else at all? What would that require of us? What would it mean if the question wasn't, how do I know I can trust you? And it was, how do I know I can trust me? I'm often asked to come into communities and organizations, and very quickly, the whispers begin that it's an unsafe place. And there's a list of events, sometimes people, who ensure that lack of safety. But in all the years I've done this work, I've never stumbled on to that wicked little sniper in his cubicle who says, today I'm going to make the whole system unsafe. So where does all this mistrust get started? I think we have clear vocabulary about trustworthiness. Kemp is reliable. He does what he says. Doing and saying. Oh, those are good. Measurable. That's it. But doing and saying are the outcomes, the results. The source of trust is not in the doing and the saying. Our relationship with trust starts way earlier and in a very, very shadowy place. A kind of alchemical inner awareness full of history and certitude and all the things that crowd us into identity and tell us what we're good at and what we're bad at. It's a very pathless place. All our learning's codified there, cataloged there. What should I trust? What should I not trust? And often put there, not by us, but how we're trained by our culture, parents, families. I only really know one internal awareness that I can speak to with great authority, and that's my own. If you could hear what is in my mind every day, I think you'd be appalled. I really do. I think you'd see my judgments masking as wisdom. You'd see my certitudes presenting themselves as expertise. The quickness with which I will trust my own unexamined instinct before deeply listening, you'd say, wow. Now, some would say, what does trustworthiness have to do with this chaotic interior awareness? Everything. My wife, Carissa, reminds me that it's not the thoughts and the feelings that crowd us all the time. That comes with life. That movement is happening every moment. What she says is, It's the time we spend with select thoughts. It's the weight and meaning we give to feelings and the passing things that have really no meaning at all. Once around a shaman's fire, I was asked a question that I struggled with, but the answer was very simple. The question was, what is one thing that no divinity or no other person can grant, gift, or offer you? The answer was self-honesty. And now we get to the harrowing part, my friends. Self-honesty. Presumably, what they knew was it was our responsible ownership of that interior awareness. Yes, responsibility for our intellectual life and our emotional life and our spiritual life, but real presence to that chaos within us. Our responsibility for that internal awareness. Self-honesty is a torch. And when you light it, you have to use it. And when you have to use it, you have to go where it's dark. And where it's dark, there is wisdom, but there's pain. You go down past all your habits, down to all those places where other people told you who you were, convinced you of who you can trust, who you can't trust. Harder still, we go down to those places and look at the parts we played in the narratives we used to justify our own sense of mistrust. It's a torch. It's what Carl Jung, the brilliant psychoanalyst, meant when he said, your visions will only become clear when you look into your own heart. Look, that makes sense, right? We know we're in hard, violent times right now. And how we show up in those times matters. We're not solo contractors. We're parts of networks, families, communities, countries, globe. We're interconnected. Our networks intersect. And we all know that failing to be responsible for how you show up can slow those networks down, can inject mistrust right into them. And then we can stand back horrified and say, why do we live in such a troublesome, mistrustful world? So it's easy to talk about this, really. Self-honesty, of course. But how? How do we do that? How are we self-honest in a hall of mirrors? There's a wonderful waterproof match that you can use to light this torch. It's a simple thing, but it's a start. And it's the start for self-honesty. And that is the ability to notice what's arising in you. The ability to notice. You don't do anything with that noticing. You don't assess it. You don't analyze it. You don't judge it. But you notice it. And when you notice it, you realize how trapped you are at first. Because when we meet our feelings head on, we become them. Think back, each of you, to a conversation you had this morning or yesterday, an argument you had with a loved one or a friend or a colleague, and they're wrong, and they've used triggering language, and their thought pattern is off, and they're behaving badly. Think about the state you're in when that happens. Think how quickly you hear them and say, yeah, but. When we are in the hypnotic grip of a thought or a feeling or a sense of outrage or of being wronged or misunderstood, we're in a singular, non-resourceful space. Resourcefulness is the key. What you focus on determines the state you're in. If we feel fear, the world is fearful. Anxious, we're being beset by anxious-making things. It's not to say that the world isn't in that moment frightening or anxious. It's to say there are other feelings present. The resourcefulness is that there is something else. And the big question you get to hold with for the moment, when you notice that feeling, who is the noticer? Who is noticing? Kemp, you're really agitated right now. Who is that? I got a sense of the answer to that from Audre Lorde, the poet, beautiful poet, essayist. She understood this. And this is what she said. She said, we bear the intimacy of scrutiny and flourish within it. Intimacy of scrutiny is what I'm calling noticing. And bearing it like a burden, like a sack on your back, like a pain that you have to bear. Why? Because when you notice and start to notice, when you practice that intimacy of scrutiny, you see how self-important you are, how opinionated you are, how certain you are. You see how willing you are to displace what's happening inside you onto someone else. So make no mistake, every petty grievance that you see in another is a judgment of yourself. That's how it works. And so the weight of what we learn about ourselves, it's a weight that has to be borne. There's an interesting trick of facilitation. And the trick of facilitation is always start with a check-in. And the check-in is a simple question, which is, how do you find yourself in your seat right now? Now, ostensibly, the group thinks of the check-in as a kind of loosening exercise, gets people talking, kind of calms everybody down, because every meeting is always tense at the start. It's not. It's an invitation to this harrowing moment. And what's interesting is it follows the same pattern. The first or second, who knows, will say, yeah, good, glad to be here, looking forward to the discussion. But someone along the circle has been thinking about that. Where am I right now? And a voice says, I'm distracted. I have a sick child at home. Instantly, the circle closes. Instantly, there is intimacy, or the starts of it. Another voice says, I'm overwhelmed. I'm anxious because I don't know how I can get all my work done. Another voice might say, I'm annoyed being here. This is a waste of time. We've had meetings like this. And still another voice will say, my father's dying. But here's the interesting thing. No one ever jumps back to the shallow, yeah, I'm good, fine. Once someone goes deep, the next goes deeper or as deep. And that process, think about that process. What is that? Why does the group come together? I think I could shed some light on this by saying at one time I interviewed a man who'd been hired by Nelson Mandela to be a campaign advisor when he was only 27. He was commenting to me about how overwhelmed he was by the responsibilities to be of service to this extraordinary man. He said, I was very lucky. I had my elders. And I was really interested. I said, your elders? Well, you've got to tell me, what kind of advice and counsel did they give you? And he looked at me like I had said something sort of absurd. He said, no, they're my elders. They don't give advice and counsel. They listen and ask questions. They listen and ask questions. This is the noticer. This is the elder self that all of us have. We crowd that elder self out with all our urgency and all our content. But that elder is always there, resourced by that internal elder voice, that noticing. When have I felt this way before? Kemp, how old do you feel right now? How is what they're saying to me true? How is my critique of them true of me? Space. Questions come in. Suddenly no longer in the grip of the singular feeling, the hypnotic stare of that emotion or that thought or that conviction or that certitude. I'm freed. There's space. Other states can come in. Curiosity, humility, inventiveness, humor. And there we are, carrying our own bags, releasing others from our projections. No one is going to look at the person distracted with a sick child at home and think, well, she's not really listening to me. She doesn't care what I have to say. This is why the check-in works. This is the beginning of what Audre Lorde called flourishing. Because we need each other. The best thing, of course, is to name your noticing to another. Let them see it. It frees you, and it frees them from our hallucinations, our projections. We're no longer alone on the single track of a reaction. Each time we notice, we make room for ourselves and a lot more. And by the way, let's be clear about noticing. It's a practice. We're not perfect. We're gonna go out after this and get into an argument driving home. Just, you may not notice how you feel. But don't worry, because the task is not to not do it. The task is to get faster. And if you fail at noticing, don't worry, because the test comes again. We get to get it again and again. So when Audre Lorde promises flourishing, I really want to just finish by asking, what is the shape of flourishing? Because the freedom that comes with noticing is good, and self-honesty opens the space. But what's the shape of the flourishing? Come with me to a winter afternoon. I'm bedside at a hospice patient who's been quiet for several days. Brave woman. She's staring at the ceiling. I'm in a chair, and suddenly she speaks for the first time in a while. And she says to the ceiling above us, "You must give 100%. You must commit to this life 100%. I knew she was talking to me. I knew she knew that I was not committed to 100% to this life because I didn't know how. She knew I had my fears and my grievances, and I panicked. And I said to her, how do I give 100%? How? I can't do that. What beautiful timing. As if she's speaking now. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were brown and watery and beautiful. And she looked at me and said, "You just say, thank you, thank you, thank you to everything." She died the next day. And we arrive at Audre Lorde's flourishing. Flourishing is gratitude. Gratitude is the harvest of the torch of self-honesty going down into the dark, and all the things you've had to look at, and all the moments you've had to notice, and keep noticing, and keep noticing. Gratitude is the gift. And it transforms our adversaries into mentors. And it turns our setbacks into teachable moments. It turns sorrow into wisdom. It helps us understand that grief and praise are two sides of the very same divinity. No longer driven by projections or grievances, we look around and we see trust is not earned. It was with us all the time. And grateful, we flourish. And we begin to hear a different music, a different playlist than our favorite ones, a different sound than we might have imagined or longed for. It's a music that is most mysterious, very beautiful. Consider it simply this: the music of what happens. Stephen Jenkinson, the writer on grief and dying, said, "We're born in dangerous times. Consider that an affliction, or consider it an assignment." It's a good assignment, folks. We can practice it. We can practice self-honesty and noticing and gratitude in any different way we choose all the time. On the drive home, in a meeting tomorrow, for the rest of our lives, maybe even best of all, we just can do it right here and now. We want a more trustworthy world. We start at the foot of our own mistrust. We want to belong to more generous communities. We soften our own flinty hearts. We want to scale trust in the world. It starts with us being trustworthy. In the end, it does feel like one of the most important assignments is to call ourselves toward a trusted table in which the whole world, or at which the whole world, can feed our own. Thank you so much.